Many people are just living to work and working to live, drawing a paycheck just to make ends meet and accumulate more stuff. But what were you created to do? You have a vision. There's a purpose and a power in a vision that God gives you. And we're going to talk about that next as Arkansas Live starts right now. I appreciate you joining us every day on Arkansas Live, and especially this week as we talk about the power and the purpose of vision. God said in Jeremiah 29:11, I know the thoughts I think towards you, thoughts of peace, not evil, to give you an expected end. Stick with God, run with God, and He will cause everything that He called you to do to come to pass. Let me finish the rest of the story here that I left you hanging with yesterday, talking about the difference between a goal and a vision. A goal is what you purpose to do, but a vision is what God calls you to do. And with the vision, the batteries are included, the power is included to make it come to pass. Vision is a redemptive revelation of God. God's given you something to do, and He wants you to do it, or He would have given it to somebody else. That's something you need to grab hold of. If you've got something that God's spoken to your heart to do, He's given you that assignment. Anyway, back to the story. My friend was saying on television in his ministry, this was many years ago, something that he was going to build, something he was going to do. And I heard him say it, and I read his letter, and I just grabbed my stomach, and I was grieved in my spirit. And I knew by the Spirit that was not from God, and it would never come to pass. Consequently, it only took a few years to where it fizzed and dissipated and never came to pass. My friend died, went to heaven. So I asked I asked one of his closest associates that was also my friend. He used to work for him. And I said, can you help me something I've been puzzled with this for years? I did not, and I did not ever share this or expose his name, who it was and what it was. But I pondered on it, and it grieved me because it never came to pass. And I said, and you used to work for the man, and you were with him 24/7. You traveled with him. You preached with him. You were in his home. He was in yours. You knew him well. And he said, well, what are you talking about? And I shared that with him about how the man of God went on television and said, here's what I'm going to do, and blah, 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 and I need your help. And I said, and I knew that it wasn't God, and I knew it'd never get done. And I felt bad for knowing that. I mean, I felt really guilty because I wanted to appreciate and love and honor my friend, but I knew that wasn't God because the Spirit of God witnessed it to me. And so I said to another friend that worked for him, I said, can you help me here? He kind of grinned and leaned back in his chair and said, yes, I can. He said, I loved and honored the man more than anything. And he did. But he said the reason he never began the project, well, he did build the land and build the foundation. But he said the reason that he never completed that is because that was not the Lord's vision. That was His. I said, well, how do you know that? He said, I know that because he had seen what he was going to build one place in another state and wanted me to take him to see it because he wanted to build one just like it. I said, so you're not dishonoring the man, but you're telling me that God did not tell him to build that. He said, no, He didn't. He built it because He liked it, and He wanted to provide it for people in His state and his property. So it never came to pass. He died and went to heaven. To this day, it has never been built and never come to pass. So I was relieved that I wasn't dishonoring or feeling ill towards my friend, my brother in the Lord. But I knew in here, the Holy Spirit witnessed to me that he didn't speak that to this guy. So there are a lot of things out there today on television, in newsletters, in books, in whatever. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of words out there. There's a lot of vision casting going on. But just because they say the Lord said, doesn't mean it was true. They're not. I don't think they're intentionally lying. I think they get caught up in something. In the Scriptures, God rebuked the prophets and the shepherds that said, the Lord said. And it says, and the Lord did not say. So I'm not talking about a goal, something you want to accomplish. That's an honorable thing. That's good. Paul said, I press toward the mark. I press toward that goal. I'm running to bring it to pass. There's no harm or deception in that, as long as you understand the difference between the goal and the vision. The goal is what the man desired to do. The vision is what God said he wanted done. So if you stick with the vision, even though you have to wait for it, even though it tarries, even though it takes a while, when it shows up, it speaks. What does it say? It says, I am God. I am what I said. I am what I wanted done. We had people in our church in the very beginning. We started in a shopping center, and we had people in our church that said, you know, when you buy a piece of land and build a building, we'll start coming. Because a shopping center, a church, can be transit. It can move overnight. It can move here, there. It can, you know, they got no roots down. They got no money invested in the land, or et cetera. And I'm not saying that's a measuring stick, but that's the way this particular person felt. And so they didn't come to our church until we purchased the land and built the building. Then they started coming. Their whole family came, and that was 40 years ago, and they're still there. What were they waiting for? They were waiting for the vision to speak. To them, a church building on a piece of property that they owned was the vision speaking. It was completed. Everything that God says do will eventually speak. It will eventually come to pass. And that's how you know it's of God. And of course in Luke it tells us, you know, count the cost to make sure you can finish what you start. But with the vision, according to the Bible, it comes with its own power. God will complete that vision. He will finish it. He will show you. That's what I wanted done. Okay, let's move on. Let's go over to Acts 26. And I realized that I did not read you the second statement on Monday's program concerning issues in our culture, and I will right after this. Acts chapter 26. Let's look at verse 19. Acts chapter 26, verse 19. This is the Apostle Paul standing before King Agrippa. Whereupon, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient unto the heavenly vision. Now, he explains what he's talking about in the previous half dozen verses. This is where he was knocked off his horse. The Lord said, why persecutest thou me, Paul, or Saul of Tarsus? And listen to this. I think this is worth reading. Because Paul is explaining all this to King Agrippa. And the voice spoke to me and said, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for you to kick against the pricks or the goads. And I said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus, whom you persecutest. But rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared unto you for this purpose. Now here's the purpose part of the vision. Every vision has its own power, and every vision has its own purpose. God doesn't do anything without purpose. There is always a purpose. Listen to the Apostle Paul. Jesus said, I've appeared to you for this purpose, to make you a minister and a witness, both of these things which you have seen, and of those things in the which I will appear unto you. You remember the definition of vision? A redemptive revelation of God. Jesus told Saul, he said, I have appeared unto you for this purpose. Here's the purpose. To make you a minister and to make you a witness. And I'm going to deliver the people. I'm going to deliver you from the people, from the Gentiles, unto whom I now send you, to open their eyes. Here's the purpose. And to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins, and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. So the purpose of the vision that Paul had of being the apostle to the Gentiles was so they could be saved. That's what God was doing. God's still doing that today. This is why we shouldn't be so quick to criticize those that God puts in positions of authority to be a minister, to be a witness, to save people, to heal a nation. You know, there are a lot of people that have been very critical of President Trump just simply because they don't like him. They don't like what he does. They don't like what he says. They don't like what he stands for. But even though that may be a reality in your life, set all that aside for a minute and see and admit and be honest that possibly God may have put him in a position to save this nation from destruction, to save us from socialism, to save us from self-destruction. I remember hearing a minister friend of mine, and he shared this publicly. He said that one day he was talking with the Lord, and he said to the Lord, he said, Lord, I don't think many people like me. And I've forgotten exactly the phrasing and how the conversation went, but the ultimate result was the Lord spoke to him and said, well, there are times where I don't like you either. He didn't say he didn't love him. He said there are times where I don't like you either. There are all kinds of things about ourselves that people may not like. But if you've been sent and assigned to do something for the Lord, there's a purpose to it. And as I said earlier, everything that is being communicated, that is being projected, that is being cast as a vision or word from the Lord is not always true. It's not always God. Somebody set a goal. Somebody wanted to do something. They liked what they saw over here. They want to do this. They want to reproduce it. That doesn't mean it's God. And if that's the case, it has no batteries included. It has no power to make it to come to pass. So as you reset your goals or ask God for vision, understanding, clarification, make sure that you know that if it's from God and it lines up with the Word of God, the power of the vision is included. Now, let me digress here just a minute. I want to go back to this before I forget it completely. This is a statement that I think is worth dealing with. You remember several weeks or months ago, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made a major announcement, and he declared that the United States would no longer recognize a controversial legal opinion. Interesting to note, underline that, legal opinion. This was not a law. This was not a congressional act. This was a legal opinion from the Carter administration known as the Hansel Memorandum. Now, some of you may not know what this is. I'll explain it to you. And a lot of Christians need to know this too, because if you're informed by the secular news, you are not really informed. You're being misinformed on purpose. And this Hansel Memorandum suggested that Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria were illegal. Now, you've heard different phrasing used. They've accused Israel of illegal settlements. They've talked about giving land away for peace. But the Israelis don't need to give away the land. It belongs to them. They haven't squatted or settled it. By that, I mean they haven't taken it away from anybody. They haven't prevented anybody else from having it. It's theirs. It was given to them by covenant, by decree, from God Himself. Some of the land has been given away. But it never produced the peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians that was told. No land for peace deal has ever produced any peace, which every time I read these things reminds me what the Scripture says, that it's only the Prince of Peace that is going to bring peace. Jesus, He was called the Prince of Peace. He said, "My peace give I unto you, not as the world gives, but my peace." Let me go on reading this if you're interested. The Reagan administration rejected these memorandums. Now notice this was a memorandum in the Carter administration. Well, Reagan defeated Carter, and according to the Reagan administration, they rejected this memorandum's findings, and every subsequent administration, Republican and Democrat alike, refused this memorandum until December 23rd, 2016. Barack Obama, the Obama administration, one of the most anti-Israel administrations that America has ever had. The Obama administration, in its final month in office, betrayed Israel at the United Nations Security Council when it came to vote on a resolution that condemned Israeli settlements as a flagrant violation of international law. And then U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Samantha Power, was told by the Obama administration to abstain voting. The United States abstained, the only country, member of the United Nations, that did not vote. And it was at Obama's request. Allowing the resolution to pass, such resolutions had been repeatedly vetoed by the United States. Now, Secretary Pompeo and President Trump conducted a careful review of the legal issues at stake and determined that it agreed with the position adopted by the Reagan administration. Here's the statement. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not per se inconsistent with international law. Calling the establishment of civilian settlements inconsistent with international law has not worked. It has not advanced the cause of peace at all. This is a complex political problem that can only be solved by negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Now, Pastor John Hagee commented on this. You know, Pastor Hagee has a program on VTN. I have served with him for 14 years on the CUFI board, Christians United for Israel. I've been there many times. We know for a fact people living in Judea and Samaria. America's new position concerning Israel is a 180-degree reversal of the Obama's administrative position on settlements. The U.S. is to be a loyal and true friend to Israel. We cannot seek to impose our will upon the Jewish state. We must honor the Jewish state's sovereignty and their right to make decisions on matters of war and peace, free of international interference. The revocation of the Hansel Memorandum is the latest in the Trump administration's consistent and considerable support for our ally, Israel. Let me tell you something, folks. Syria has built military bases, especially airports, where they can launch jet fighters in southern Syria, just north of the Israeli border. I was there in May of 2018, and I visited the ports where the Israeli Navy ships are based. I didn't even know Israel had a Navy. And when I was able to go aboard one of their destroyers, I visited with the captain. I had served in the Navy in the United States in the early 60s, and I'd served on a destroyer. And I was curious to see their readiness and their warfare. They've got superior warfare than the U.S. and anybody else in the world. That destroyer is smaller than our destroyer was, but yet it had greater firepower than ours. So I asked the captain, I said, Captain, why does Israel need a navy? He said, we were in Haifa. He said, that's a seaport. He said, because Russia is looking for a soft water port. They want a place where they can invade Israel. Now, this is not all political. This is biblical, folks. And that's why it's important that you have the rest of the truth, that you learn the truth and not just the secular media's attempt to lie to you and deceive you. So he goes on to say, from standing with Israel in her efforts to combat terrorists, this is the role of the U.S., to recognize the fact that Jerusalem is the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, to moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. We are grateful for this president and his administration for treating Israel like an ally, respecting the will of the Israeli people as expressed by their elected government. And I had a lady who runs a ministry there in Judea, Samaria, and I had her tell me, she said, Pastor Caldwell, I know you're on the board of CUFI, and if CUFI has any voice at all with this administration in the working out of this peace plan, please urge them to urge this administration not to do anything that gives away land in Judea and Samaria for peace. Now, you stop and think, and I know this lady, she lives there. It's her home. All of her ministry outreaches are located there. That's their land. That would be like the state of Arkansas asking your city directors or your mayor of the city you live in, asking them to give up your city and all your land, even where you live, to the state of Texas to maintain a peaceful border. I mean, that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous. But yet that's what is being portrayed in the secular press to try and get Israel to give away land for peace or be condemned for not doing so. That Hansel Memorandum was passed over by every political party and administration for years until Obama told his Secretary of State to abstain from voting to rescind it. That's going to weigh heavily on his plate. He is an Israeli, Jerusalem Israeli hater, and it shows in his actions. I'm not judging him. I'm saying by his actions, he has been very anti-Israel. And that's one of the reasons that we've seen the turmoil over there. Now we have a very pro-Israel administration. And that behooves us to continue in this vein for our sake, for their sake, for everybody's sake, to strengthen Israel. So I just wanted to give you the rest of the story so you'll know when you start hearing the political pundits and all of the fake news, chastising Israel, you know that's not true. And you have to know that. And it behooves us to continue to put people in office that are pro-Israel so we can continue to encourage them. And where I digressed a while ago, these military bases that Russia has in Syria, and they're looking for a saltwater port, they're looking to invade the nation of Israel. Ezekiel 38 and 39. They eventually will. But the church will be raptured out before that happens. It's called World War III. And we're going to be gone. We're going to be in heaven. After Revelation chapter 4, the church is not on the earth anymore. The church is in heaven. And so all of those, prophecy experts that are telling you that we're in the tribulation now and the sixth seal's being poured out are in error. It behooves you to know the truth yourself, because the church is not on the earth during the Great Tribulation period when those seals are opened and the wrath and the judgments are poured out. So you need to make sure in your vision casting that you get all your facts correct, that you know exactly. Don't take my word for it or anybody else's word. You get in the Bible for yourself and make sure you have correct information, because we're entering into nearing the end of the age. And it's important that we know what's going to happen so we can line that up with whatever God calls us to do. Remember, vision is a redemptive revelation of God. And without a vision, without the redemptive revelation of God, people perish. While our country's economy is booming, while there are so many good things going on in our country and around the world, without vision, without a revelation, without a redemptive revelation of God, people perish. They die for lack of knowledge. They don't know the truth, and the knowledge of the truth is what makes them free. Let me go on with this. These statements. There is no vision, where there is no vision, no redemptive revelation of God, people perish. So if you want to see whether a vision is present or not, look at the people. How's it impacting the people? We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas and where you're watching to.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on Twitter at Happy_Caldwell. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at vtntv.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at vtntv.com.